We think about, being able to use art as a tool to talk about controversial issues, to be able to highlight those issues that our community is dealing with. The audience is then able to ask themselves questions around like, what was this person's story? What moved them towards making this decision in a way that sometimes when we think about policy and politics and all that kind of comes within this nonprofit industrial complex, it polarizes us and sometimes paralyzes us from being able to move those conversations. But storytelling gives us an opportunity to move through that.
If you've ever chosen to sex work at any time in your life, then it's kind of seen as that you've knowingly consented to every sexual encounter with any person at any time, that somehow, as a sex worker, you're in a permanent state of consent. Unfortunately, of course, this is not true. And we see this damaging misconception play out repeatedly in the justice system.
The doctors should be our natural allies because they see the consequences of clandestine abortions. Our strategy with the doctors was that we built a national network. It's called Professionals for Health for the Right to Decide. And we have more than 1,000 doctors and professionals of health working in different provinces and saying it publicly, saying, I'm a doctor, I support legal abortion.
I think the context that we all live in, I think it's fairly safe to say that whether we call it right-wing activism or religious fundamentalism or extremism, different sorts of fundamentalisms, plural, including economic, I think we're all living in a moment of terrific global instability that is partly based on challenges around gender. Everyone here is doing really provocative work to expand how we understand gender and to actually, I'll take this a step further, to protect the idea of gender itself.
I started to wonder, okay, so what counts as porn and who actually gets to do the counting? So it was starting from this perspective of looking at the interplay of desire, sexuality, porn and pleasure, and how that's all sort of being governed by systems of power, both online and offline.
This idea of how seductive criminal law is, this power of, again, we know that structural change needs to happen, but until that does, what do I do with a man who we know killed a woman? He needs to be in prison. And there's this anxiety that if we don't put him in prison now, I'd rather risk innocent people being in prison than having this killer on the loose. There's that sense that I think it's important to take care of.
The nonfiction, in my case, has always come when I see the atmosphere darkening, a kind of bullying consensus in the corporate press, the way it starts going after something. And all the nonfiction is written with a great sense of urgency where I want to blow open a mainstream consensus that is building.
In Middle East, we have this brutal, vicious circle. We have so many tragic deaths happened in our history during since our constitutional revolution in 1906. So many freedom fighters, writers, poets, nationalists died in the same way when there was no camera available to capture the moments of their deaths. So the idea started like that, thinking about all these figures in the history and how I could reconstruct the moments of their death.